Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your hosts, Brad Wilson and John Chai.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson. Today is a tactical day, and I am once again joined by my co-host, John Chai. John, what's up, sir?
How's it going, Brad? How are you?
Doing quite well. Looking forward to today's episode. You promised that you would see me next week, and here we are. Next week is this week. So what do you got cooked up for us?
Today's episode is going to be about whether it is worth it or not to go for some thin value on the river. So that's going to be the main question in both of these hands is whether or not my hand is good enough to bet the river. Is it worth it? When you're betting a hand for a marginal hand on the river, there are lots of potentially bad things that can happen. You can get raised and be forced to fold. You can only get called by better hands and not know it. So that's going to be what I'm asking you today.
All right. Let's dive into the first hand then. So you've got the King Jack of Diamonds in the big blind. Looks like the villain in the hijack limps. The small blind ISOs to 40. You decide to call with King Jack of Diamonds, and the limper calls. Looks like both the limper and the small blind have, are shortish stacks. Any read on the small blind?
Yeah,
I think you can go ahead and say the under the gun limper is most likely a wreck.
A fish.
Yeah, a wreck.
A wreck.
Fish,
sorry.
wreck,
I thought you said reg. Yeah. I thought you said reg. Sorry, misheard you. Yeah, definitely. Undergun player is definitely a reg. The small blind is
wait. You said under the gun
player. All right, we're gonna say fish.
Okay,
We're gonna say fish.
Okay.
Under the gun player is definitely a fish.
If you think about it, like rec and reg, rec is like 98% of reg.
That's
just
true.
missing the little final thing. All right.
And so, I think the small blind is a reg who just didn't have a chance to reload or something before the last hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So small blind reg, hijack fish.
Correct.
Flop is King 10 8.
Do you want to talk about pre-flop at all? Just really quickly. I mean, I think just there is a small decision here about whether to flat King Jack or 3-bet. Facing a small blind open, King Jack would be a completely standard 3-bet. But we have the fish behind us to consider. Do you have a preference here as to whether to flat or put in more money with the King Jack of Diamonds?
Yeah, I like flatting. That was why we didn't talk about it.
I don't know. Why do you like flatting?
I overlooked it. I was like, oh yeah, it's flat. It's simple. Because you want the player in the hijack to come to the party, and you don't want to knock them out by 3-betting and isolating yourself against a small blind who is probably playing somewhat appropriately. You want to have that player in the hijack involved in this pot post flop. Just your King Jack suited is just going to make more money that way. So
yeah.
That's why I prefer the flat.
Yeah, I think that's the main reason for flatting too. I think another small consideration is that the small blind's ISOing range here is much stronger than the small blind RFI range. I don't think the small blind is going to ISO the hijack fish limp with ace 4 offsuit or something like that. I assume so. I do think that the small blind range, the small blind's ISOing range here is stronger than their opening range, which I think is a small reason to also consider doing a little bit more flatting from the big blind.
They're definitely going to have more of a complete range from the small blind when the hijack limps. Whereas I know that there are some like limp strats from the small blind versus big blind, but in general, people deploy an RFI there. But in this case, with the hijack limping in, they're just going to have a complete strat from the small blind. So they're going to limp in themselves with probably, their lower equity hands that they may have raised with if it folded around. So yeah, I think you're right that, their ISO here is almost certainly stronger than the 2-bet. However, with that said, king jack suited is just like it's still good enough to 3-bet if you so chose to squeeze.
Sure.
So we get a flop of king 10 8 2 clubs, king of hearts 10 8 of clubs. There's 120 in the pot, 3 ways. The small blind bets half pot, multi-way. You flop top pair with third kicker. Really not much of a decision here, huh?
No. There is not much of a decision here. Obviously, we're never folding and never raising. But I do think that, we should be like the small blind C bet here from a reg is pretty
Terrifying.
meaningful. Yeah, especially when he bets half pot, right? Out of position into 2 players on a super wet board, with the fish behind him. Like I don't think this is I have to imagine that this half pot C bet is very, very much equity driven, and it's not it's not like range or I don't think he has very many low equity C bets, particularly for the size, particularly when he's out of position versus 2 players, and especially when one of them is very, very loose.
Yeah, like ace queen ace jack I think are the 2 hands that kind of come to mind that they're probably not betting here half. Maybe if they have a club, or maybe if they have like ace queen ace jack of hearts, but it wouldn't just be like dry gut shots without any kind of like blocker properties or anything. Like they're going to be selective here in the hands that they choose to bet with.
Correct.
Means that we need to take this bet serious. This is, you have king jack. I'm already a little bit afraid.
That's exactly.
I'm already very tentative here and kind of hoping that the fish overcalls and then the reg checks, because that I think even then you're still unsettled.
I'm like, do I want the fish to even overcall? Like, I'm not even sure. Like, can we just keep this as simple as possible?
Yeah, that's true. So the turn is the 7 of hearts, and the reg checks, which I think is it's pretty expected though, I would imagine.
Sure.
They're not betting aces. They're not betting ace king. Like when they do bet the turn, they're essentially repping like 2 pair plus, at least. So would you just fold to a turn bet?
Okay, so like on a completely brick turn, like the deuce of spades turn, if he C bet, I think I would just fold. I'd fold and like never tell anybody about it, or like never show anyone the hand. But I probably would just fold the turn. On the 7, where like I actually turn like, some hope versus hands that are better than king jack, I would not know what to do facing like another half pot bet on the turn.
And 70.
I think versus the big size, I'd probably just fold and again never show anybody.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I was so happy that he checked that. I cannot express my happiness that he.
I believe you. And this also kind of goes back to the flop play of like, if you have like 2 pair, if you have a set or hands of that nature, I would not be super inclined to raise the flop. Like I wouldn't have probably a raising range on the flop with the fish to act behind, even if I flop like bottom set or mid set. For all of these reasons that we're talking about, that even a hand as strong as king jack facing a 70%, you just want to pitch, which kind of reflects how strong the small blinds bet on the flop is, and how you want to have stronger hands in your range so that you can just defend downstream. Because if you don't keep stronger hands in your range and they keep betting, like you're just not going to be able to defend anything.
Right. So you're saying that if you raise your sets on the flop, then like guess what, you're folding to every single turn C bet because
exactly. Because you just don't have those hands in your range anymore.
Right.
Plus, kind of similar principle applies that was in play pre-flop, where you would like, if you flop a set, you're happy if the fish joins the party and like overcalls the flop too. Like that's a totally reasonable outcome. All right, so 237 in the pot on the turn. The board is king 10 8 7 with 2 clubs, 2 hearts. John has king jack of diamonds. Turn, I imagine, goes check check, and the river is the ace of hearts. So completes the backdoor flush, completes ace, queen, ace, jack. The theme of this episode was whether or not to thin value bet. I am really going to struggle to find a thin value bet here, but we'll see what you do.
I think this is I agree that this is now that we've like had our conversation about pre-flop flop and turn. I feel not as good about thin value betting this river. I actually did though.
Yeah, I see that. I see the 1/3. You have that bet out there.
I think I tanked like all the way down before like betting 1/3 on the river, which is pretty rare thing to do before betting a third. But
Yeah, I think I just like the downside of betting here just has to outweigh the upside.
I didn't think I ever get raised or like rarely get raised, which was one consideration. The real question here was like, do I ever get called by worse hands? Are there even worse hands that like play in this way? Does King 9 ISO pre and then bet the flop? I don't know. Maybe I'm also I don't know. Like, does a hand like jacks and queens ever see bet the flop and then call the river facing a third? I don't know.
I don't know, but those hands terrify me if they have queens or jacks. Like the hands that you're targeting to get called by are hands that like
gonna jam
could turn themselves into bluffs. Like facing this river third.
Yeah, especially like with a heart or something. They just
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think this is asking for it.
I was definitely asking for it.
Yeah, let's see.
What's really, really funny before you do the reveal is that this guy tanked down to like 1 second left in his time bank and then called.
With a better hand. Yeah, with king queen. Exactly.
He was like, he really didn't want to call with king queen. He's like, what kind of idiot would bet king jack on this river for 1/3? No one would do that, right? Like, how can I call with king queen?
Yeah, I actually wonder if like
he's thinking about raising.
No. I don't think they're thinking about raising. I'm wondering like, yeah, I don't know, John. I think that's like it's too thin. I think
okay, all right.
When they tank down to 1 second and call with a better hand.
Well, yeah, afterwards I realized it was too thin. Yes, I know that, but like
I think even in the context of just like our breakdown leading up to the river spot, I can imagine that you started feeling worse and worse about betting the river.
For sure. I mean, as soon as we started talking on the flop, I was like, I know what Brad's going to say on the river. Also, what's really funny is that as he was taking down to like 1 second, I was still very confident that he could have a better hand than mine. Like I wasn't like, as usually when people start taking down and you value bet the river, you're like, oh, please call. And here I was just like, I don't even know what I'm rooting for as he takes down.
Yeah. Well, days without incident. Wipe off the board. Back down to 0. Let's see if we can get a half day coming at you after the break.
Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.
All right, welcome back from the break. Right now, we're going to be diving into the second hand. Looks like John has the hardest hand to play in all of No Limit Texas Holdem. Are you sure you don't just like fold this pre when everybody folds around, John, these jacks?
No, that's not the thing to do. You're supposed to raise 10 big blinds, and then the big blind folds, and then you turn your hand face up, and then say something about this is the only way to play jacks.
Yeah. And then everybody nods solemnly in agreement.
They're like, yeah, you did the right thing, buddy.
You did the right thing. So everybody folds the small blind. John has jacks. He opens to 3x, and the big blind 3 bets. Uh-oh. Now we're in dangerous territory here, facing a 3-bet blind versus blind.
No. This is exactly what you want with jacks, actually. And like, this is this is like kind of being semi-serious. Like, please lower the SPR. Like, help me lower the SPR so that like when I get to the river, I'm not like, having a ridiculously tough decision with pocket jacks. So I'm actually happy to see the 3-bet, especially blind versus blind. I mean, jacks.
Of course you are.
Jacks is
By the way, I'm being sarcastic. Jacks is the 4th best hand in this game, so you should be happy when you have jacks. John 4-bets to 230, so he opened at 30, 3-bet 90, 4-bet to 230, and villain, I assume, just calls, and we see a flop. So 460 in the pot. There's actually a little bit of depth here. Villain has 927 behind. John's got him covered. So SPR is around 2. So ace 10 is the flop. 4-bet pot here. Blind versus blind. I assume you're just going to bet.
Yeah, just super simple 4-bet pot PFR strategy. Sure, all the Tactical Tuesday listeners can guess what I'm going to do on the flop.
He bets 1/4 of the pot. So he bets 114. Villain calls. Now there's 688 in the pot. Flop was ace 10. Turn is ace 7, putting up a backdoor flush draw. John has the jack of clubs, though, so blocks most of the backdoor flush draws that they would have here. He checks, and villain checks behind. Now we have a deuce of hearts on the river. So ace 10, 7, deuce. This is a tricky spot. So guess I'll ask you your thoughts here first.
Okay, so I think when I check, all the hands that I beat are going to check back. Minus some bluffs, I guess. Sorry. All the hands that have showdown value that I beat are going to check back. I think that when I check, all the hands that are better than mine are going to bet the river. I don't think he has hands like kings and queens because those just jam facing the 4-bet. I assume. I think like even like the strongest ace X like portion of his range probably doesn't exist, like ace king. So maybe the best trips hands he has are like ace queen and ace jack. But I think even like even a hand like ace 4 suited is going to find a value bet on the river. So yeah, I'm kind of like one of the things that I'm thinking about on the river is like, if I'm going to like pay off every, ace X value bet on the river with jacks, maybe that's a flawed assumption to begin with, but that's, I was planning on check calling. And I never get a bet from, let's say a hand like 10X or pocket 9s or pocket 8s. Are there enough bluffs for me to justify checking here? Or should I think about like trying to take some of those 10X hands down with me, kind of as if I'm going to pay off all those ace X value bets with every time I check?
I think it's reasonable. Like, I think, you kind of hit the nail on the head that they don't have like the ace kings in the range. They have ace queen, they have ace jack. We have the ace kings, we have 10s full, we have ace 10. I just think that like we have all the best hands, and based on the actions that they've taken, they've probably washed away some of their better hands, so they're going to end up with a lot of 10X and some pocket pairs that are lower than the 10, like 9s or 8s. And so I think that like it does make sense to just go ahead and bet. I would probably choose a bigger sizing here.
Why?
Not like a third. Because I don't think that you would want to split your range, and I think if you bet small, that it's very obvious that you're splitting. Like that you have like some hands that want to bet small and some hands that want to bet big. I would just use a size that like my value would use, as well as my bluffs, and so probably go like 60% ish, somewhere around there. I mean, you might could jam, but that seems a bit much.
No, that I bet exactly 60.
Okay. Well, there you go. You did not bet at all.
Dude, I value bet the spot where you told me not to value bet, and I checked the spot where you're like, this is probably a really good value bet on.
Days without incident. still 0. Just stop the writing on the board. Stop it. Put the Sharpie down. We're still at 0.
Wipe it
we
off.
get we get no half day here. Well, congrats. I'm guessing that they just check back like 9s or some kind of 10.
The
10.
hand that he checked back, I mean,
That's gotta hurt.
oh my god, that's the equivalent of the guy canking all the way down and then calling with king queen. It's like this is like the other side of it.
Yeah, they check back king 10, so they block kings, and they have strong second pair. And how quickly did they check back?
Snap.
Not even a thought.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder about your bluff catching plan.
Yeah,
It makes me think that plan is
Well, if he snap checks back like queen jack or king queen or something like that, then like the bluff catching plan is not good.
that's
but
true. That's
the
true.
10 is like whatever,
Yeah. Well, as I said, I prefer the 60% value bet.
Yeah.
And
I can't believe all these
that's
YouTube
it.
and podcast people learn poker from me. I guess they're learning poker from you. So
it's a mix, it's a mix. Good show, man. Good stuff. And that's all I got.
see you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter. Join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter @CPG Podcast.